We are live, and Holly's going to be joining us in just a moment, which is awesome. Hey, Holly!
Hello. Should I hide it?
Oh, no. There it is. No. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing, show number 112. And this is actually the first time I've got to start the show just with you.
I know.
That's pretty cool.
It's sort of exciting.
We should make it the Lauren and Holly show.
Let's talk about the others.
Please, especially since Ed called me about an hour ago saying he regrets to say that he won't be able to join the show. He has, he's doing a charity function, and legitimately fundraiser. So, he unfortunately had a thing come up, and I said, well, just do yourself a favor and watch the show a little bit after it's over, just to kind of catch a little something.
That's so funny because I came really just for that reason, because I scheduled a dumb appointment in a half an hour.
That's okay. I'm
so mad at myself.
I always appreciate any moment of time I can get from any of you and all of you. So I would never ever complain of people missing only a half hour. To me, it's like any chance to go over and chit chat for a little bit is awesome. So I'm all good and happy with it. So no worries. And I made fresh cup of coffee. So I'm good.
As did I. Where is your display?
Oh, I'm saving mine now, knowing that he's not going to be here, because I have this really cool animation program that I can take a person's picture and make them talk.
Of course, Lauren, you're going to take it to the next level.
I wanted to so I you know how his favorite saying is, so here's the thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So here's the thing.
So here's the thing. So I took an audio clip and I put it with it and stuff. And so and Mr. Stuart, but Stuart totally hands down kicked it. They just, he was the aficionado on this one today.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Yeah, that was like, and he gave us all the stuff we needed too. It wasn't even as if we had to go dig for it. He actually provided the necessary components to the process.
So many colorful suggestions.
It
was a little bit alarming.
What's up?
Stuart, I love your room. What have you done?
I've been decorating.
You know what?
Finally.
It has both of you have a class and a caliber to your rooms that I just never seen before. It's kind of like Cindy Crawford herself came in and made the designs. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
So guess who's not coming to the show today?
Yeah, he called me an hour ago. He called me an hour ago to tell me he has a fundraiser to do and that he regrets to say he won't be able to make the show. I said, well, do yourself a favor. Interesting, you should pick this show, not to show up, but maybe maybe go look at the show, the recording, and just take a little look and see how things are. And Holly was asking about my display in the back, and as soon as I found out that my printer decided not to make the journey, it actually died. It just does ribbons. I said, well, let me go. I have this program that does 3D animation. You can put a picture on it and it makes it talk. So I was just telling Holly that his favorite expression, so here's the thing. So I took an audio excerpt of it and looped it into an animation of his picture. So we can make him. I want to use it in the future. Whenever he doesn't show up next time, I'm going to actually use that as I'll have him join the show. I'll go and put it on the other computer and have him join the show.
just say here's the thing.
So here's the thing. Yeah. So I think
here's the thing.
So here's the thing.
I had doubts about this because I'm kind of conflicted, because part of me thinks it's really funny, but the other part of me is like, I'm playing into Ed's ego. We're all talking about Ed. He's not even here. We're showing pictures of him. It's like his master plan has come to fruition.
But it has a life to itself.
Taking over the world.
Yeah, but it has a life to itself. So even if we didn't feed it, it would still exist. As the Matrix would say, there's survivabilities he's willing to go for. I mean, he can survive even without us.
That's funny.
His ego, I should say his ego. Hey, we only have Holly for a half hour because she has also another commitment. So we lost Robert. Robert's in Charleston, which is envious because of all the pictures of food he's sharing on Facebook. Sure, Tim is, I forget what Tim said, but he was stuck with a meeting of some sort, and then of course had to bail for charity work or fundraising. Either it's fundraising for his company or charity work. I'm going with the positive that it's charity work. So we have Holly for a half hour. So I threw out that. It was great that Robert's been throwing out the topics these past few weeks while I've been floundering around getting settled in. But I actually threw these ones out this time, and I didn't know if it's Holly, since you have only the half hour, you have dealer's choice.
Oh no, you can't have me because I, of course, didn't do my homework. So I was only going to be here for half an hour.
Wait, excuse me now, but you realize that you're about to enter the pit of despair come October for your classes, the term "not doing my homework" is not an acceptable term for what you're entering into.
That's why I didn't do my homework. Oh my gosh, it takes me 4 times as long to do what 20-year-olds can do in this programming world. I can eventually get it. It just takes me a long time. I'm not a natural.
I find that odd for you to
say. Faster, for sure.
Yeah.
No, okay. So, and Stuart, you do coding, right? Like, why don't I just do my homework? So you have to think completely differently. I mean, you have to think in very sort of elemental terms. And so last week I was working, and then I had to go and do this speaking engagement. And I thought, I wonder if I'm going to get up on stage and like talk in short sentences or loops or something. I didn't. It was okay. But I hope it doesn't change my brain completely.
It's like learning another language. You're definitely right. It does. The way your thought process has to happen for coding is very different. You have to objectify everything and figure out how things relate. So I kind of view the whole world that way in general. So I guess that's why I was a natural coder, but
probably
it is a different way to think than the normal human interaction.
Holly, were you ever good at Excel? Were you good at Excel? Did you ever do Excel stuff?
I like Excel. I actually wrote some code 20 years ago, and it was insane. Like, I wrote this really complex program, and I loved it. But it took me 6 months, and I never saw humans, and it probably would have taken my boss, who was good at it, 8 hours.
Hey, but there's nothing quite like that eureka moment when you cracked it and you finished it and there's no bugs and you accomplished something. You created something out of nothing. That's such a euphoric feeling.
Here's the other thing, and I know that there's scientific research that supports this, but it's incredible to me. So you come upon a problem, you fight with it, you go to bed, you're exhausted, you wake up, and your subconscious has solved that problem.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How does that work?
The brain is a mysterious thing, for sure. But it is. For sure, take a break. When you're running, your head is butting against the wall and you cannot solve a problem. Just take a break, go to sleep, just empty your brain of those thoughts, and your subconscious will often figure it out. You're exactly right.
Yeah, you sit down the next day and you know exactly how to fix it.
Mm-hmm. I will say that not to say quoting Einstein or something like this, because it is quoting Einstein, but you can't solve your problem with what got you into making the problem to begin with, kind of thing. And that always is like my go-to. If I'm stuck and I've chased this tangent down thinking it was the absolute answer and it isn't, then it's like I keep hitting and it's like, well, wait a minute, maybe if I just stop thinking like what got me here and think differently, and it usually is the one trigger switch for me to get out of my hole sometimes, and then other times it just doesn't work. Hey, just to do my age, my first coding I ever did was to go to Radio Shack and go on the Tandy and go over and do the Commodore and put line 10, Lauren Gray, line 20, read line 10, and make it go in DOS over and over so my name would go across the screen.
Yeah, I think mine was the same. It was probably a Spectrum, not a Commodore, but it's very similar.
Yeah, it's a sad thing to admit that, but hey, that's just how fast now. I mean, even just recently when we opened up Google's 19 years old. 19 years old. Think of the change in the world in less than 20 years that whole propagation is created and so forth. It's mind blowing for it. Well, some stuff. I mean, I have actually thrown a couple of tools and stuff into these things. If you don't follow a platform called AppSumo, it's really a cool platform for startup softwares that are needing to get critical mass and usership, and so a lot of really neat early adoptive software comes through those. AppSumo, and one of them was a thing called Promorepublic. And what's really cool about it, and I just want to throw it onto the show today because it was a tool that I've been using, and it's been literally a lifesaver when it comes to scalability. It helps with everything that's going on socially. It has trending and so forth. You can look up topically on all the social platforms. And in it, you can create your post, either just literally pluck it out of a calendar and say, yes, I want to use that, or take it and then put it into a template, add your own little twist to it. You can schedule it, and you start creating this calendar of stuff. And you can do it topically and so forth. And it's a pretty neat program. And they have a neat tool also that will allow you to review your Facebook page and just see how well you're doing. It's just, this is, since Ed's not here, this is the anti-Ed thing, because Ed hates when I keep saying to small businesses, there's things they can do for themselves, because Ed doesn't want that. He believes all things should be handled by the professionals and don't let amateurs do it. But I think that there are useful functionalities.
I can't believe I was almost going to defend Ed. It's just the way that I am. He would say, no, they just shouldn't be spinning their wheels. They should have a strategy.
Mm-hmm. And I think that there are enough people out there that have no opportunity to bring an Ed or anybody into their budget. I mean, they're getting to the point now where we're rolling into October. Their budgets are all but finalized, or at least all but approved for 2018. Some have lost the battles of getting more resources and so forth. Some have just resigned themselves that they have what they have and that's it. And now they're sitting with that bleakness that there's going to be another time period coming up, whether it be 6 months or a year, that they don't have a solution to what they know could possibly help them. And that's where I think these little gaps fall in. I think there's things that people can do for themselves, if anything, to justify the case study that other resources need to be brought in, just by showing some sort of moderate results at a very small scale. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
If you want to,
100%. I think we live in a world where anyone can learn anything with applying the right amount of time and effort, right? So I think, sorry, my phone, I didn't turn off. I think I hung it up.
It's probably Ed calling.
19 years ago, where, like you said, Google was invented. Before that, we had other search engines. But really, looking at YouTube as well now, I saw a stat. Actually, when I was reading one of the articles you sent out, there was an ad at the top for YouTube, and it said 93% of millennials use YouTube to figure out how to do something they don't know how to do. So I don't think you can become an expert overnight. I'm not saying that. And being an agency, I'm not saying that you don't need help from the professionals. But I think there's a very strong argument to be made that if you're an independent property with finite resources, you can go figure out some of this scrappy stuff and produce a minimum viable product to show that it works to warrant investment further. So things like Facebook advertising, it's really easy to learn in an afternoon just by watching YouTube tutorials and things like that. Mm-hmm. So go dabble with this stuff. It doesn't mean you're going to be the best, doesn't mean you can go start a new career in it, but you can do enough to make a profit and prove the concept, and then invest heavily and find experts that have gone through the learning curve and the pain points, and maybe we'll squeeze a little more juice out of the lemon as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think to that is I'm beginning to see that there's a viability to understanding the landscape. Like, okay, Holly, you've decided to climb a mountain, literally, in what you're going to do.
That's what I do.
You've decided, look, this is where I want to get to the top of that, and I want to learn this to get there. And I think a lot of people are just intimidated by the fact that they don't have an understanding of the lay of the land. Not everybody has to become very good at Facebook advertisement or coding or SEO or any sort of particular, but they need to understand the value propositions that each represent. Because at the end of it, they get to decide whether they're going to invest resources, monies, or time into doing those things if they think they're valuable. And that's the part that's missing for them a lot of times. Is it's an all or nothing proposition. Either we're bringing in an agency that's going to do all this for you, or nothing's going to get done, and it's a self-initiative that people feel that they have to do to at least help themselves. So I think that sometimes just an awareness of what's out there, to your point, Stuart, where it's like, hey, look, I may not be good at Facebook advertising, but I need to understand the value proposition if I want to understand whether I should be chasing that down or something.
And I've always struggled when new things come along. I don't know. I'm a status quo kind of a guy. I like innovation. I like to look at what's coming, but I don't always understand it. Like when Twitter was first announced and started to take off, I really couldn't grasp why people wanted to be limited in what they were saying. And it wasn't clicking with me until I rolled up my sleeves and created an account and went and started engaging with people. And then I had that eureka aha moment of the sense of community that it brought. So I think there's a lot of folks out there that are scared by technology and scared by the new stuff. And, I went through the same thing with Snapchat too. Didn't get Snapchat. I was like, why do it if it's going to disappear? Until I started engaging with colleagues and friends on the platform. So sometimes you just need to get your hands dirty, roll up the sleeves, and go just try it, and that's how you learn. And then you'll figure out, this is how people are using this platform. How can I leverage that to help my business as well?
It kind of came from. I've always believed that that's critical, because when I used to have restaurants, I would never have a position in the restaurant that I didn't know how to at least do. I may not be best at it, but I knew how to do it. And it proved valuable time and time again, because I'd have a cook that in the middle of a rush got mad and said they're going to quit. And I'm like, yeah, you can quit, lose your job. And yes, it's going to be slower for food to come out, but I can cook your slot and we'll get through it. And the restaurant will suffer, but you're going to suffer worse because the next day you're going to be looking for a job. So, these kind of mentalities that went into hotels, the same thing. Housekeeping appreciated that I could come and clean a bed. And I was not the fastest at it by any stretch, but they loved the fact that GM would roll in and make beds with them on a day or something like that. And the same true with this stuff. It's like, you can't speak about it unless you've at least tried. You can't. To me, it's like you can't have an opinion about it unless you've taken from the perspective of it. So, I agree.
Well, one of the things that I've been doing the last couple of months is actually going out and training, which I never have done before. And I've been training this new sales program. So I get this group of salespeople together and I actually teach them a little bit of technology. There's a couple of apps that I found that I introduced them to. But what's so cool is I spend a little bit of time teaching them the technology, but then they figure out incredibly unique ways to apply it. And that's the ideal situation. To me, if you're a GM of a hotel, you figure out who your early adopters are that are going to embrace the stuff and learn it, and then get them to share it with everybody else, because you have people who aren't going to go out and learn it themselves. But if they can be taught, they can figure out then really how to apply it. And so that would be my counsel for an on-property.
I agree 100%. And I've seen a lot of properties where they find someone that's passionate. Say it's about Facebook, right? And they don't have a marketing role. They could be in housekeeping. They could be in maintenance. They could be front desk. But they understand, they're the right generation. They understand the medium. They understand the lingo, and they understand enough about your property, and they have the common sense to be able to put on the right kind of tone and messaging. Let them have ownership of it. It gives them more satisfaction in their job, gives them a sense of accomplishment in their job, and you do a better job than honestly most agencies can of managing your Facebook page, because you've got someone that's passionate about your property and is on the ground and can take real stories from real guests and real experiences and put them on your social media presence. So I think that's a real scrappy way to accomplish something that a lot of people see as a really difficult thing to accomplish.
Holly, since I only have it for a few minutes of time, I'm going to ask you to put you on the spot for something. With Signature Series, because you walk into properties that the staff may not be completely in step with why you're there, or the team members don't appreciate the value proposition that you may be giving them. It may be decided to be assigned to the property, and you're the facilitator. How do you tackle that beginning point? That 0 to now?
That's a fantastic question, because one of the things that Signature has taught me is whenever we develop a training class, the first thing that we tackle is how we're going to get buy-in from the audience, because that happens all the time. Somebody at the corporate level makes a decision. They're going to bring in training to the properties. The properties are busy. You've taken me away from my phones. I'm going to have 1,000 things to do when I get back. And so the first thing we have to do is focus on how we're going to get buy-in. And we do it in a whole bunch of different ways. But let me tell you, one of the best ways, we call it a reality trip. When we go in and we talk about delivering great service or making a good sales call or whatever it might be, everybody in the audience shakes their head. They agree it's important, but they also think they really do a pretty good job of it. And then we have done some sort of mystery shop on the property, whether it be a phone call or of late, I've been sending email inquiries to sales offices, and I put it up on the screen. And we black out the person's name so nobody can see actually who it is, but that person obviously knows who it is. But everybody that sees it thinks, I've done something just like that. That's awful. I can't believe it. You do that, the light bulb goes on. All right, maybe we need some help. And then ideally, the second thing that we do is we do the same thing with competitors. So we show what your competitors are doing. And the trick to that is your competitors really aren't doing much better than you are. That actually makes people feel better that they can succeed. If you show your competitors are doing an amazing job, they feel defeated and they're not going to be as open to learning. But you show them that they're really not doing it either. You can beat these guys. That gets you the buy-in every time. I've given you away the key to our kingdom, but we have trainers who, literally, when I sell training, I say to people, We spend as long as it takes to get buy-in from the group. Some groups are easier than others because if you don't get that buy-in, they're not open to learning anything new. You've got to get the buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
There. That was an easy one for a change.
Okay. So another question to this is, what happens if you are walking into the best performing property in market and you it's harder to find those things that justify the conversation? I mean, obviously, go ahead.
Unfortunately not. There's always, we hate training the bottom folks because the bottom folks, the ownership generally doesn't really have the commitment to make it work. We love training the middle folks or the high-end folks. The high-end folks are usually so geared up that they want to know what we can do to make them better. And we better come prepared with some ideas or that's going to be a problem. But the high-end folks, top of the folks, they're often easier because they've had training, they've seen that it works, they've gotten better, now they're good and they want to push the boundaries. We love those folks. They're easier than you would imagine.
Wow.
But
okay.
Sort of the same thing. You've got to show them where you can add value.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can't come in, especially with adult learners, you have to make every process collaborative, every learning process collaborative. So we never come in and say, we know best, this is what you should do. We say, these are some things we've seen work. What have you done? And then they sort of build upon it. That's just what I was saying about the apps. When I train salespeople, I give them a little bit of technology. They totally build on it, so they take more ownership of it. That's secret number 2.
Okay, I'm going to ask for the last of the secrets. How do you keep it continuing on? Like, there's that excitement of the event, there's excitement of the introduction, there's excitement of the newness, the successes that come from it. How do you then make it stretch farther, keep that continuity?
So this is absolutely maddening to me for 2 reasons. One, I spent a lot of years training internally at my own company when I worked in hotels, and I didn't have the reinforcement element built into it. And so I think, how much of my life did I waste? Because there's something called the Ebbinghouse forgetting curve. You forget 80% of what you've learned within about a week. So no matter what new stuff you've learned, if you're not applying it within a week, it's gone. And so what a waste. And so you have got to build in reinforcement methods. And so that's why we do ongoing shopping. And the trainer comes back. We see an ebb and flow. So we come in and we train. We see scores go up for about 4 months. And at about the 4-month mark, there's a plateau. And so we send the trainer back in to sort of reinvigorate them. It takes constant effort. One of the best things we've found is we now train supervisors how to coach their people all the time. And so that doesn't happen unless we have a coach that calls the supervisor once a month and we have a one-on-one session with them and we hold them accountable. So some sort of measurement, helping to hold people accountable, celebrating wins at every opportunity. So anytime something good happens or somebody used the skill and it went well, making sure to celebrate it. So that's it. Those are all our secrets.
All right. One last futuristic thought then. How do bots fit into this? Because obviously, I mean, I threw a couple of questions, a couple of things in here, and it's the shiny thing. And I know we're not going for shiny things, but for the future of progression, because I got to go speak at Rocket next week. And so I got the fun task of talking about futuristic, what to be looking on the horizon stuff. And bots is one of those things. Bots are proving more valuable in some low grade kind of conversations. But do you see them becoming, especially with AI, more progressively intrusive to what you're talking about? Or do you see them as an augmentation of success? Or
I think an augmentation. So I think people want options. So one of the things, I just wrote a chapter for the CHDM about things like Keeper and the Alice app. So what those things do, they're not going to replace humans. They're going to allow humans to do what humans should do, which is sort of the warm fuzzy or the big problem solving. Take the tedious stuff out of it, and that's what the bots can do, and that's what these guest service tablets in guest rooms can do to automate and make sure things move more smoothly, so you don't have to deal with constant tedious, I need a pillow, I need a towel, answer the phone. It takes me away from talking to the customer. So no, I think it can augment it, done well.
Stuart either made a funny face because somebody walked into his office, or he wasn't totally happy with the tablet in the room and the stand.
Can you reading way too much into that?
Can you imagine people walking by Stuart's office?
I've had a lot of questions, and to hurt Ed's feelings, a lot of the questions have been, "Who's that on the wall?" So,
yes.
So much as he might think.
Yeah,
But,
I guess his fame hasn't reached as far as Myrtle Beach yet. Even though you would think, based on his referencing of Myrtle Beach and the successes there, that there should be a statue already somewhere down by the beach.
I guess I'm just not training my staff well enough to know Ed. I don't know.
Hey, I do have to tell you something though, Stuart, about one of your staff members. I posted something from a competitor, probably on LinkedIn. I shared an article and wrote something nice about it, and I got a message from somebody who works for you saying, "Hey, we write some pretty good articles too. Have you ever thought about sharing anything?" I'm not kidding you. And I said,
"Wow,
I love that. I absolutely will. I forget who it is. I'll look it up and send it to you.
Okay.
It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
I'd
And
like
I
to
said,
know.
I'm a big fan.
Well, thank you."
Well, there was also.
But that's funny. Our guys are just passionate about what we do, so they're always reaching out and reading other people's articles and trying to share ours as well. So.
Yeah, that was cool. I have not gotten that a lot. I share a lot of stuff, and I haven't gotten people, trying to get me to promote their stuff. So that was fantastic, I thought.
But it's also a testament.
Well.
Yeah, it's also a testament to the fact that you allow them that latitude, that education or continued learning is such a critical component to being able to be good at what you're doing. Because I see it too often, especially in agencies when you're dealing with people. There's very talented people that are kind of like a fish taken out of the ocean and put into an aquarium. Where they were really excellent in the ocean, they're kind of contained and stagnated in an aquarium, and they stop or not allowed that opportunity to read new stuff and do it in a way that isn't like on their own time or behind the curtains. It's like, no, look, active, look out there, what's going on, look out what people are seeing, because obviously if they're reaching out, representing whom they are with you, it's not because they're being secretive about it or personalized about it. It's because they're genuinely a part of your team, looking to make sure that they keep in touch with everything. So that's a great thing. So
we encourage that. I mean, just this industry in general moves at such a fast pace. It's obsolete in 6 months. If it was relevant 6 months ago, it's probably not now. So you have to stay on top of it. Otherwise, you're a dinosaur and you don't stay cutting edge. So we really encourage everyone to continue to learn. Part of why we started our podcast was for internal education as well, because we knew it would force us to write more content, produce more content, and educate ourselves, and actually know the stuff we were talking about, because we didn't want to be pushing out publicly that we didn't really know what we were doing. So it keeps us on our toes. It's really good. And we also have internal training sessions. We have what we call Fuel University, where we cross-train each other on different aspects of either what we do in the office or new stuff that we've seen that's bright and shiny that we're interested in. So we spend a lot of time educating.
And that keeps everybody humble too, because when you begin to get thinking that you know what you know, it's one thing to know it internally to yourself. It's another thing to be able to convey that and be able to explain that to somebody, because until you know it well enough to do that, you don't know it well enough. So we're looking forward to Holly explaining all coding in 6 months. We're looking at that. All right, we're going to sit back
right now,
and we're going to go to Holly school.
Right now, I'm just trying to get the cat to catch that darn mouse. That's what I'm coding. Goodbye.
I looked at your link. All right.
Goodbye. Sorry.
Holly, have fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad she was able to join it. It was fun. It's like we started with Holly. I'm like, my God, this is, I think, the first show I've started where Holly was on the show at the first out of it, and joining us later on to it. But we lost all. You know what? So now we get to pick on everybody. Robert. I mean, I don't know what to pick on Robert. Well, there's a lot to pick on Robert about.
Where to begin?
Yeah, right. And Tim. I mean, I think I should, now that I've done one animation for Ed, which, by the way, it's a program that I've had for a while, so it sucks the bandwidth out of the computer because it's graphics, and Macs are not famous for graphics. And it just like bogs it down. I would have run it. I'm going to run it on the second computer. I really was going to have it as a second player and have it pop up in this little window and just have it speak.
That's
so
funny.
I'm saving that for future references for him. So, but anyway, so we got the whole board. We can talk about whatever we want to. I don't know if you had a chance to peek at some of this stuff.
I did. I looked through it all this morning. There's some good articles. There's a
some
lot.
interesting. grab something for. What do you think about what you want to throw? Since it's going to be you and me show today, it's like, yay!
Yeah, and if anyone listening along wants to join in and jump in on the conversation, you can just.
Especially the one that thought you were truly from Australia, from a place called Myrtle Beach somewhere in Australia. Honest to gosh, there was a posting. I don't know whether they're being sarcastic with it, but they said, because when last show we were talking about the fact you're not from Australia. So he says, I always thought he was from Australia, Myrtle Beach something,
That's funny. Yeah, it's right next to Bondi Beach. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, actually, Bondi. No, I take that back. Amazing beach, but totally not what I expected. Totally overhyped. I thought it was this massive half moon, beautifully huge beach, and it's really a very small beach. Beautiful beach, but not a really big beach. But yeah, it was kind of neat. But anyway, so which one? What do you grab out of the bag of stuff?
Let's start on the Booking.com article. I think the person went on a bit of a rant. How they're using stress. Stress to create urgency and create bookings. And so a couple of things. One, I agree 100%. Booking.com are using a lot of psychology to push people through a conversion funnel, no doubt. And I know you've spoken about this at Rock, and I've spoken about this in general, about how OTAs do a really good job compared to hotels of pushing people through a conversion funnel. So I definitely get it. I feel like they kind of missed the point. I feel like it was a negative toned article because they felt like they'd been duped into booking a property that maybe wasn't ideal for them because they didn't do their due diligence. But I would argue that Booking.com is the number one OTA in terms of volume and it's grown so much because it does such a good job with the psychology and creating a frictionless experience. And it's just a pleasure to book on. It's my go-to place to book when I'm going somewhere out of town, just because I know it's going to give me every piece of information I need from every angle, and it is going to apply forward pressure, and I'm going to have a frictionless booking experience. So didn't agree with the tone, but I kind of agreed with what they were saying. But I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you because I didn't agree with the tone. And if anything, if for those to look at the link, the screen captures that they got to present their point really presented the point you're talking about, which is it is fundamental based marketing. You're providing a reference of value by doing a strike through or something like that. You're giving a sense of urgency by quantity, whether legitimizing the actual inventory available or not. You're presenting what is apparent in someone's mind. Am I losing an opportunity? So that's the stress they were trying to point. But it's like, no, it's quantifiable. If I walked into a store and they had 2 rows of water that I could buy from, and the shelves are stacked, and they're all the same price, I have no idea if it's a good price, bad price. I have no issue about quantity. Maybe I want to wait because there's tons of water, compared to walking in and seeing shelves empty and seeing one on sale. I'm like, damn it, let me grab it now, because, hey, somebody right behind me might just grab the last one. So it kind of feeds on traditional marketing. And this has been around this whole time. It's just, and then the other screen capture parts that they have, all the information on that screen is relevant. Cancellation policy, terminology,
reassurance, social proof. Everything we should be doing as marketers. I think for me, I look at Booking.com as the poster child of how to do it right, and I try to apply the same, persuasive tactics to my clients because they do a really, really, really good job. So rather than complaining about it, understand it, and use the tool the way it's intended to be, but then apply it to your business, and you're going to make more sales. That's the beauty of psychology, right? It's foolproof. You know that it works. It's been tried and tested for hundreds of years, how to sell and persuade people. And that's all they're doing. They're just applying it on a new medium.
And to that point too, is like, from a client relationship, there are certain clients that's not a part of the strategy for 18 that we're discussing with them. And right now, this whole past few weeks have been like budget hell, because you have to justify every conversation with quantified cost, quantified revenue, and should it be or not should it be included into the budgetary process for next year. So that you have all these circular conversations as to productivity values and so forth. And some of the things that they like to hear but didn't like, they liked the positive that it was a cost reduction. They didn't like it because it was a identity reduction. And that was taking some hotels' websites and stripping out a ton of stuff that was not functionally helpful for them. They lost the war about destination information. They're not the anchored authority to destination information. So quit bloating their site with destination information that is not being used. Traffic dictated it, heat maps dictated it, engagement dictated it, and instead, as we kept culling down some of this content, we kept seeing mobile usage creep up. So it was validating the fact that with mobile usage, you're not going to read reams of pages, adaptive or not, on your screen. You're really there for more of a streamlined process. And I tried to tell them, it's like 3 clicks to book. If we can somehow get as close as we can to 3 clicks to book in a process on a mobile environment, obviously we need other content available past that. But from a value proposition of your website, just stream it down to lean, mean, and productive machine,
Yeah.
And
what's relevant, and you look at what Booking.com does. It's not that they don't have a lot of valuable information. They're providing all the things we said, reassurance and social proof and urgency and all this stuff, but they're doing it in a very good design. Like it's on a single page, you can see everything you need to know about whether or not this particular property is going to be right for you and your booking. So you need to have some design applied to what you're doing, but don't fall into the mistake that a lot of people used to, which is the NASCAR effect, where it's, I've got 70 different stakeholders in my business, and every one of them thinks that their particular line of business is as important as everyone. So now the groups of meetings and the golf director and the events coordinator all have prime real estate on the homepage, which really isn't helping my bottom line. I can get that message to people at some point later on, post booking or whenever. Don't clutter the homepage or the landing pages throughout your site with superfluous information that doesn't help people get through that funnel as quickly as possible. Like you said, 3 clicks is optimal.
Yeah.
But don't distract them. Don't send them down different rabbit holes, for sure.
Right. You brought up are you a NASCAR fan in any way? Do you just?
I'm not. I just like that term, the NASCAR effect, because it's. I mean, everyone can relate to the stickers, One
of my favorite presentations I ever did about trying to explain social SEO, SEM to people to understand how the relationship works. I use NASCAR because I'm not a NASCAR fan myself. I mean, I like NASCAR, don't get me wrong, but I'm not like a fan, like I follow anything or anything about it. But I was trying to explain the teamwork effect that if you try to be a lone NASCAR racer, you can't win the race because you can't stay in front the whole time, and you can't get past certain people unless other team members help you. And what I was trying to say with NASCAR is that there's team orientation to it. The person that's most likely to win on that track with that type of car is the team leader to that process. And so social media is kind of like the car that gets in front of you, that's your team member, that's pushing the wind in front of you to allow you to draft so you can keep your positioning because it's controlling conversation your way, so to speak. And SEO isn't behind you, and it's a blocker. And I'm using my hands down below. A blocker to keep cars from behind you, your competitors from behind you, from taking over your position, because it's moving in such a way that it's harder for them to pass them to get to you. And then you have SEM, which is your slingshot, which is the guy that comes up beside you, you pull up and draft, suck behind him and slingshot past him so that you can get to the right, because it was a discussion about ZMOD. You can lead the race 99.9% of the time since the race started, but if you don't pass the finish line at the ZMOD, where the conversion happens, you didn't win the race. So that in mind, it's a matter of positioning. Sometimes you're not always in front. Sometimes you're in the middle of the pack. Sometimes you're not showing up for certain things, but you choose the time to make it to be the one who crosses the finish line at the right time. That was one of my fun presentations I did, I think, at High Tech a couple of years ago to try to explain. I had little graphics. It was really cute. But anyway, High Tech. Cool.
No, anyway. It's a very apt analogy for sure. And I think what it illustrates is that, a lot of these different marketing channels have very different purposes. And I don't think people look at it that way. A lot of times they'll try to accomplish the same thing with every channel. Every one they're trying to get bookings, or every one they're trying to get email addresses. And I think you've got to understand where people are, who the people are on those channels, what they're doing when they're on those channels, what their intent is, and how can you move them towards a favorable outcome, whether that's a booking or a like on Facebook or an email acquisition or whatever it is. But knowing how they all work together is really, really important as well. And even so you're reinforcing messaging and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, even when you have discussions where I've had some people that, this is just, there's a certain dynamic of politics that go on when you're in a conference room with the client. There's players in different positions. I know I'm speaking to the choir. That there's people that they have their own agendas as to what they're trying to prove or validate their existence in the room or something like that. And they want to be able to point at something and go, "Ha, see, I caught them. So yeah, this is what's going on." And so they'll pour over what you're feeding them. And they'll go over and say, "Well, hey, look, your positioning, you're down on these keywords. You went down and so forth. That's not good. That's bad. We're losing ground there." And I'm like, "Well, you look at the words, and they go, and then going back to the NASCAR now, it's just like, you can't lead all the time on these things, and you don't want to. So look at those words. They're event-driven words. We're not, that event's not happening anymore. So we're not interested in maintaining a lead position in those with efforts, and our content's being updated, so we're going to keep organic traffic duration on there." And then I go over and I pull up, like if you do your good goal setting on your website, I pull up the contribution of that page, perhaps, in a dollar sense that Google is great about teaching. And it says, look, it's still generating you value, but you just don't have to lead the race all the time with it. You're still in the pack. You're just not in the lead at this point because it's not worth your time. When it comes time, we'll be focusing on it, and we'll be bringing you back up into the front line when we know that it has a value proposition. But those kind of conversations where, people, they're not there to be to help the success. They're there to justify their own in some way. So I always,
for sure. Yeah, and they're always looking at everything with a critical eye and trying to get you, So yeah, I agree. I mean, we come across that, and try to just train people to focus on the right kind of metrics and not the vanity metrics, like things like rankings, or it's been a while, but we used to get a lot of folks that would just open their laptop and pull up a keyword that they thought was important and say, "Look, I need to be number one on this keyword." And we'd have to go through the process of showing them how much search volume there was, what competition there was, and explain to them the nuances in the algorithm so that it's personalized to location and your browser history and all this other stuff. And, it took a lot of energy. But we've gotten to the point where most of our clients are kind of over that hurdle, and they're focused on, like you said, let's look at the value of SEO in general, but specific pages, landing pages, and all the keywords that drive traffic to those landing pages, and look at what they contribute overall to the bottom line. That's a much more effective way of looking at ROI for SEO, which it used to be very intangible. You'd measure rankings and that was about it, but it's not the case anymore. You can really tie it back to revenue.
I do think, though, we should put the clickers back on the bottom of the pages of page views. I just think
little counters,
a little counter.
I remember the first website I ever created, and I think I ended up spooked because you could always set the start number for those counters, right? So instead of it showing like you've had 4 visits, I think I started at like 1,500,000. But look how popular my site is.
Yeah. Well, there's still a certain vanity.
GeoCities Day, I think it was.
GeoCities. Oh my God.
Probably the first website I built was in GeoCities.
GeoCities. No, it's still a vanity issue for people where they feel like, hey, why am I not showing up for this? Why am I not being seen for this? And it's a constant explanation process to your point of, well, what's the value proposition it's bringing to you? Why is it necessary that you show up for that? Now, vanity-wise, if you want to, that's one thing. I mean, even now in some of the more traditional marketing stuff, I had some clients that were approached with sponsorship of magazines that were handed out at sporting events, and yet you couldn't refer that you were supporting the sports team. You only could refer to what your product was, and you couldn't refer to a specific offer related to the sports team. You really was just a branding vanity thing. I'm in the magazine that supports XYZ sporting club, and I'm like, why would you even spend that money? What is it, just so you feel good that when you bring your friends to a sporting event, because they didn't even give you any seats at the sporting event, that you could just say, look, my ad's in this magazine? I mean, useless money. It's like, no, spend it where you're going to get some return on value. I did make a neat matrix. I'm going to send it to you because I love your critique on it. So I was working on budgeting, and what I did was I broke down direct channel contribution to based on the client's forecast, and then broke it down to percentage contributions based on like PPC, travel ads, so forth, so on, what their percentage historical contribution value was for them on an annual basis. Then I broke down the ratio of conversion by month of each of those segments as well, created a matrix. And what I found was it was wrong because the problem with the matrix was it ended up bloating up to spending so much money based on the return on value for that given month for the segment that it represented, that it was just like, my God, this triples the budget to try to hit this number. There's no way we can make a 10% or 15% direct channel contribution and spend this kind of money. Until it dawned on me, it's a level of diminished return. When you have smaller budgets, you focus on branding. And so you're going to get the better return. But in order to expand the value proposition of, say, PPC, you need to get out of the branding mode. And when you do, you start really deteriorating your conversion value.
Yeah, that's a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we kind of go through the iterative steps in PPC of the different types of campaigns and keywords from brand to like hyper specific, because you can get some good returns if you're like near a specific attraction or event, or you have specific amenities or specific room type configuration. You know, there's some really specific things you can target that omit the brand, but really only relate to you, or you're the best fit. But then when you get beyond that, it's, you know, return drops tenfold. So you've got to be really careful.
Yeah, because that's what the problem with the formula was. It was too simplistic because it only modified based on the average conversion seen for that month. So in order to hit it, you had to spend astronomically larger sums of money to make that conversion, the contribution is supposed to be. So it was interesting.
Yeah,
so now I'm doing.
I was going to say it's a challenge when you find these little honeypots of great return on investment in any channel, and you want to scale it. You know, you're going to run into some kind of diminishing return that makes it not viable to scale. You know, we're getting that right now with Google Hotel Ads as an example, right? It's doing phenomenally well for a lot of our clients. Great return, much better than it has in previous years. But you have no control over the volume. Really, it's, you know, you can bid and you can use the automated bid modifiers and things like that to try to maximize your exposure. But because so few people are using the product right now to actually book, it's maybe 10% of what we can get through like Trip Connect or Instant Booking on TripAdvisor. You know, so we want to spend more money on Google Hotel Ads, but there's nowhere to spend it for our clients.
Right.
You know,
well, that's the other part too. Yeah, there's just the same thing with retargeting social. You can pour as much money at it, but it just doesn't spend.
It's very finite, very finite. Yeah.
Yeah, it only has a certain level of traffic to it. And these are all learning curve things for some people, because not only from our perspective of agency and implementation, but also from client and value propositions. Like they think, wow, you're getting this kind of level of return for this channel. Pour money into it. Give me that. And it's like, dude, you can shove as much money at it as you want to. It's just not spending your budget.
Yeah, but I think that's what you have to have, you know, more so than ever. You've got to have a really diversified approach, especially in paid advertising. You've got to diversify as much as you can in as many channels as you can. You know, if you're running into 100% impression share on brand keywords in Google, go put some ads on Bing as well. You know, so many people we run into, they're doing great on Google, but then haven't even considered other search engines, you know. So Bing still has 30% of the market share. You know, that's a good chunk of consumers that you can target the same way you are on Google. And social's the same. You know, if you're maxing out Facebook, maybe go try Instagram. You know, so there's other channels out there. Try to diversify as much as you can. And that's where, even though at the start of the show we were talking about trying as much as you can yourself, I think that's perfectly viable. This is where sometimes it pays to hire a professional that's used to managing multiple campaigns across multiple channels in a way that's going to be efficient, in fluid with the budget, because the worst thing you can do is set that budget at the beginning of the year and spend according to the budget and really not pay attention to ROI and shift the budget fluidly in a way that's going to maximize your return, which is what you really need to do at this point.
You make a really good point. I think that's the distinction of where Ed and I tend to diverge on these things, but we agree. I mean, the idea is when I go over and say, oh, hey, there's this cool tool that does this or that, it's because you're at a very simplistic level of engagement. It's the entry level of understanding. And my thought of it is that it gives you a ability to learn the value proposition of whatever it is connected to, whether it be Facebook or PPC or whatever. It just gives you an awareness understanding. And then when you get to a point, like home repair, I mean, I'll do simplistic things, but I will not be messing with electricity or plumbing. Usually in the same case, so either way, but because to me, there comes a point where it's like, okay, it's one thing to replace a light bulb, it's another thing to put a new light switch in, and so that's where these things in, because what we're talking about when we're using these different segments of conversation, there's a and I had to explain this to a client. they see all of the tools being shoved at all of the initiatives at the same level. Like, okay, take all the PPC, travel ads, meta search, social retargeting in general, email campaigns, and everything that we're doing, all of that has to get pushed at. It's like, no, 3/4 of that has nothing to do with a localized event. But fractions of it do. Mobile, specific, PPC, time for events. Now you're getting segmentations within those, but they see that more is better on everything, and it's not. So yes, to your point, that's when Ed and I are in complete harmony with it, and I guess all of us are. That's when people like you, that's when it should be handled, because then that's the nuance, the variations to optimize the opportunity.
Yeah, you can go at marketing with a hatchet and just kind of have a crack at it and figure it out for sure. But when you really want to maximize and you're on the scale where you're across so many channels and spending a lot of money, you got to be more precise. It's surgery at that point. You have to use a scalpel, and it's hard for an individual that wears 70 hats at a property to be able to master all that, really, and to be able to continue to learn and grow. And that's why the agencies have an advantage, because they have a team that are all pushing each other. So, if you have a team of 5 people and one of them's learned something new and then shares that with the other 5, and then each of those 5 learns something else new and share it with the other 5, the rate of acceleration of learning and experimentation and understanding is much greater than it could ever be for one individual. So that's how we're able to push ourselves faster and get better results, quite honestly, than individuals at a property can.
I'm looking for an article that you had a part in. Hold on.
Okay.
It's right here. I'm going to put it up because I want. Here, boom. Okay. The what'll make or break your hotel in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
You were in that. I liked your statement.
I was.
Yeah. Although I don't understand the typographic and the Maxim one, technology is not your ticket to getting ahead. And then you went over and had some interesting. So since I have you cornered on the show all to myself, I get to go over and ask you to expound on this a little bit.
Yeah.
What garnered this? What gave you the mindset for this? Because I thought everything was really good about it.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. It was a fun little experiment for us. So it was Fuel, it was Travel Tripper, it was Logic, and Stay in Touch. We put together a webinar, and we've been doing a series of webinars with just different industry vendors. And that's one of the things I really love about the hospitality industry is it's so collaborative. Really, if you look at it, Travel Tripper and Fuel, there's a lot of overlap in what we do. A lot of people consider us competitors, which we certainly compete on certain things, and yet here we are promoting each other and helping the industry, right? Because that's the right thing to do, and it's how we all learn. So, but we put together this webinar. It's slightly different format than most webinars that are kind of dry and follow along with the slides. And we wanted to do more like a panel discussion that you would get at a live event. So, I think Stay in Touch came up with the concept of the 3 Maxims, and we just I hosted it, and we went through lively debate about what we thought was really shaping the industry in 2018 from a technology standpoint. And the 3 Maxims were kind of broken down. Like you said, the first one was technology is not just a way to stay ahead anymore. It's a prerequisite. And I think reality is everyone in this industry has to interact with technology and relies on technology to do their job more than they ever have in the past, and will continue to, especially as we talked about bots and augmented ability to service clients with machine learning and AI and all this other stuff that's going to help us better mine the data, better personalize the experience, do all these things. Technology is here to stay. So the first part of the conversation was really about that. It was about, how do we embrace technology? How do we make sure that technology is in the right places in our organization? But I don't know anyone in the hospitality industry now that doesn't have to at least be very computer savvy at a minimum.
Yeah. I find it very interesting that some people go over and say, "Yeah, but you're going to be presenting to somebody, and they don't have a computer on their desk. They're not really into computers, but they understand what the value is."
Yeah.
And I know that they mean well by saying something like that, and there are people still out there, but there are fewer and fewer, because there's fewer and fewer people that can maintain their position of authority and value and not be, to your point, technologically savvy. You can't just say, I know how to run a big company, but I don't need to know how to run a computer, because it is too ingrained into the process of running a business now.
Right. And you know, I think it's to your point. I don't think you have to be a hardcore computer programmer to be able to, you know, understand how websites work, right? But I think you've got to at least be a user and knowledgeable enough to be able to make decisions about it, right? So like you said earlier, when you managed hotels, you knew how housekeeping did their job. You knew how maintenance did their job. You could do the job if you had to. You wouldn't have been the best at it. I feel like everyone in hospitality needs to look at technology the same way. You need to understand the benefits of the PMS you're using, the CRM you're using, your reservation call center tools. You need to understand what advantages they give you and if they're impeding you. You know, a lot of folks we go and talk to for the first time. I'm doing an audit right now for a large property group, and running into the situation where their staff are getting, well, the ownership's getting frustrated at the staff, but the staff don't have the tools they need to do their job. You know, they're managing a dozen properties. They don't have any tools for rate management. They don't have any ability to distribute their inventory automatically to the OTAs and to the GDS. It's all manual right now, you know? So the property is getting frustrated that it's taking so long to update rates on all these channels, but they don't have the tool. They haven't invested in the technology that makes that easy and eliminates the hurdles, right? So technology, it's part of our lives, whether we like it or not, in and out of work, for sure. Yeah. So that was the first Maxim.
Yeah, no, and then you have the second one too. But I mean, just one point you brought out of the first Maxim, which I wanted to make clear, was especially with the iPhone 8 having just recently been released. I find it amazing. No, I'm not. I'm holding out to be the bloated X so that I can spend massive amounts of useless money for a phone, simply to prove the high price is not the obstacle. It's the counter. You know, there's so many articles about that. I'm on the fence,
man. Yeah, I'm on the fence. I can't decide to go 8 or X.
I look at it this way. I'm going to say I'm going to roll it to karma. If I can't get my phone on October 27th when it launches, where it's going to be delivered sometime before calendar year 2018, then I will go back and I will buy an 8, because I'm not going to continue on because I end up having to buy a battery for my 6. It's only 6, not 6S or anything, and it's at the bottom scale of functionality. It's turning painful, the slowness, because of the processor. Which is what I was going to say when it comes to technology. The reason why I want the X, the reason why I would even want the 8, the fact that its processor is stronger than most laptops, is actually better than the best laptops right now in the sense of processing capabilities, makes it, to me, that and the augmented reality, this isn't the year that this is really the phone that's going to be the changer. I think next year when they debug what this does.
That's why I'm kind of on the fence about waiting. I think Apple, historically, first generation products have some kinks, right? They typically run into a few issues whenever they do a major redesign of a product. But so there's the teething issue. But then I think you're right. I think they're going to learn so much in the next 12 months with this deploying this product, that the second generation iPhone X is going to be infinitely superior. So I'm going to be really jealous if I don't get that one. So I'm kind of.
Well, you could do the iPhone, the fish hook with the iPhone, and they're brilliant about this. And I'm trying to figure out how to make this work for hotels. The iPhone plan, the Apple plan, that says you will get a new phone every year, and so it's a very expensive lease. And from their business model, it's a brilliant decision on their part.
Recurring revenue,
Recurring revenue keeps you in the ecosystem, allows you to resell the old phone to lower grade, all that. But to me, it also means I never have to worry about it. Yeah, very smart marketing. And I'm trying to figure out how to do that with a hotel. Like, can you, if you have a guest that is repeatable, that you're trying to create a value proposition, lifetime value, can you create in a loyal environment a repeatability that says, look, we're going to lock you in, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. I'm trying to, it's just a free-form thought. It's not like I got some
vacation ownership is?
Yeah, well, it is in that sense, but it also means but there's a certain need of flexibility and a certain need of value proposition that I don't think vacation ownership has, because that one is only this, only then, only now kind of mentality. Where
I don't know, a lot of them have become more flexible with the point system. You can change. Yeah, a lot of them now. There's a much stronger value proposition for being able to go to different destinations and trading weeks, and so I think it used to be you're at this property this week every year, right? That was kind of the old model, but it's evolved so much to where I've got a lot of people that are in the vacation ownership business now, either selling or they've bought their own, and it's a much better product for them because they've ironed out a lot of the frustrations. But sorry, we went off on a tangent on Apple and somehow.
Oh yeah. No, but you had the second Maxim too. Yeah, with the phone. That was just the technology edition. But yeah, your second Maxim out of the article.
Yeah, what was the second one? I don't have the article.
Oh, let me scroll back because it was down to. Come on, Maxim 1, Maxim 2 was
about service. Is that what it was?
Technology and service must go hand in hand. Yes.
Yeah. So this took a couple of different turns in the conversation. So part of it was, the service of the vendor to you, right? And can they guarantee that the service is going to always be available? Because as we become more reliant on third-party products to enhance the guest experience, whether that's tablets in the room, whether it's a mobile app, whether it's, the booking engine on the website, whatever it might be, that you're relying on a third party to provide that's interacting with your guest. If there's a problem with that product, that technology, that's your problem. Your guest is experiencing with you, not with the vendor. So making sure that your vendor selection, that you're vetting, that you're investing the right infrastructure, doing all those things to make sure that as you enhance the guest experience with technology, it's going to be reliable. Because the worst thing you can do is promise your guests that they're going to get free Wi-Fi and then they don't get free Wi-Fi.
Or if they do, it's crappy experience, right? Yeah.
It's really slow. So,
the free that they get is the lowest grade,
right?
Worst thing. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the cruise lines had the issue where they were pushing apps and promoting all the social activity on property with the cell phone service being so bad that it made it a bad experience. So you've got to be careful that you deliver on the promise of the technology and experience that you're giving through the technology as well. It's like
you mentioned
entry is another one. Don't promise keyless entry if it's not going to work.
Well, and this is just to envision our inspiration, which is the pictures behind your wall on this. Don't minimize the rollout by putting it into a handful of places, because you're only creating disappointment for you getting people liking it and then going to a location that doesn't have it. Like Hilton did with their
Hilton. I don't understand. I mean, I get it. I get from a business perspective why a suit would say, let's roll this out and pilot it, right? But the success is going to come from it being ubiquitous. That's what's going to make it successful. So, does it cost a lot of money to retrofit all your keys or your locks in every hotel? Right. Sure, but you find a way to supplement that cost somehow and roll it out. If you believe that that's the direction, which I think most people do at this point.
Well, like we said too with the Hilton, there's a difference of saying we're testing it versus look at what we have. They kind of rolled out saying, look, we're doing this. Yet it was in such a limited purview of places, compared to saying, hey, we're trying this in different locations, then people know that they're not going to expect it in other places. But to say that this is something we're doing now and then having the disappointment of having places that didn't have. All right, I have to ask you more of a question where you refer to attributions and attribution strings. And yes, there's 7 different camps? 7? I think 7 different camps now for attribution string prospect. What is your favorite attribution string that you feel is close to being what we use within hospitality? Because it is defined by industries interact differently when it comes to this attribution modeling kind of thing.
It does. And I think I mentioned this on the show before. One of our most popular podcast episodes is the one we did on attribution modeling.
53.
About attribution modeling. Yeah. And in that, we kind of went through, I think, 7 or 8 different attribution models that we have used. I'll be honest, I don't have a favorite. I think, personally, I like multi-touch point attribution strings that have diminishing, some kind of time decay, but looking at them as a trend over time and comparing them to each other. It's a really complicated answer because it's not a right or wrong. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to attribution modeling at this point. I think it's somewhat subjective, and I think it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, So personally, I'm very apprehensive to use last click analytics on anything. I think that obviously slants heavily towards end of funnel channels like TripAdvisor, for example. I'm very apprehensive to use first click or put too much weight in first click.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really dislike any kind of attribution modeling where there's not a defined event. So view through conversions being some kind of retaining 100% attribution for 7 days, like some vendors out there do with their display network platforms, I think is at best misleading. At worst, it's unethical. So I think it's a combination, but I think you've got to look at time decay and where things are in the funnel. And I don't think there's a right answer. And ultimately, when you come up with an attribution model that works with you, as long as you stick with it over time and look at how things evolve over time, then I think you're going to be fine. But there's not a right or a wrong answer, I don't think. How about you?
And actually, you hit on a couple of things. One, you reaffirm my belief in time decay, because when I did listen to the podcast, which is truly one of the best podcasts, not only about the content itself, but actually to addressing it specific to industry, I think you did a phenomenal job, you and the team did, on really trying to understand what attribution modeling is for. It just isn't a buzzword. It isn't just a fancy way of deferring somebody's interest as to where did I get the business from, but there's a methodology to it. Because I had an evil plan to take over the world once about the attribution modeling. Go figure, right? Because in the string of Google took it as Google taketh away, Google giveth, and so they give us this. They took away the keywords. And they gave us the attribution strings, and so I started looking, and I would try to see the first 3 or 4 attribution strings were too generalized. But when you start getting 4 or 5 steps within an attribution string, the way Google represents it, you start trying to look for what exactly was each component in the usability of it, and you begin to see that you can metric out your social engagement when there was a social part to the attribution string, your paid engagement because you had your tracking with your advertising if done correctly, and your organic value proposition, which was your engagement with the website, durability on the page and stuff. And if you really took the time based on what that attribution string gave you, event-driven, business cycle, whatever it may specifically be, you could amp aspects of that attribution string to better improve its value proposition as a conversion model, where you're really looking to improve the conversion of that string. Like, and I used the example when I was working on it, where it's like if I was the organic component of an attribution string was going to a top 20 things to do when you're in town, yet your paid ad was about a particular event, or your social engagement was about a particular post about an event, then scrap the 19 other things off that page, create a unique page specific to that event, and push it up and see if you can improve the conversion string to it. Time decay included, because time decay to me is a critical component based on what the string represents. Engagement opportunity window. If you match it to your book windows or your business cycle, if it's related to it, you see there's almost a parallel of engagements in your attribution string to either the business cycle or event timeline associated with the promotion. It stays pretty consistent. So to your end, first click, only to dissect why the interest was first garnered. Was it platform specific? Was it content specific? Was it A/B testing on your imaging or whatever? And then last click, what was the point of? Was it time duration because it was close to the event or to the inquiry string of the attribution? Or was it because of content again? So everything you're saying, everything you said in your podcast was so true. Was like, yes, there has to be a weighted value. There has to be a time decay to it, but it also has to be intrinsic to what the attribution string was driving on the conversion. So I thought it was a brilliant conversation.
Yeah, thanks. And I think the other part that a lot of people miss on the attribution string is, we're measuring one transaction, right? So especially in the hotel industry, we deal with a lot of clients where, they have high repeat business, but maybe it's 60%, but that means 40% of folks every year have never stayed at the property before. But our job is not only to get them to stay at the property, but get them to come back again and again and again, right? So their behavior the first time we acquire them and the value of that first stay is really, if we're doing a good job getting them to repeat business, is insignificant compared to the lifetime value of that guest. So looking at attribution modeling, I think it holistically can be misleading, because sometimes I might get a lower ROI from a specific attribution string that is generating new business, but I'm okay with that because I know I've got a good percentage of increasing the value of that guest, versus if this attribution string specifically is targeting Like if it's starting from my email campaigns to guest history, I know that those are previous guests. So it should cost me less. My return on that spend should be lower. So I think there's so many nuances and complexities to it that I think we get into a dangerous situation when we try to use a one-size-fits-all methodology to measuring success, which is why I really like to look at the same data from multiple angles with posing different questions and with different attribution modeling, because I think that tells a more accurate story of what's really going on. It takes a lot of time and effort, but I think it's worth it in the end.
Jeremiah says, I have a bit of an echo. Sorry about that, Jeremiah. And Jeremiah is also asking, can I ask a big question on attribution modeling? Are you sure the traffic is due to your outbound marketing or just your inbound?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on the channel, the campaign, whatever it is. And I think attribution modeling in its broadest sense is really a way to measure all activity, inbound and outbound, right? So certain behaviors, certain strings are going to be more focused on deliberate acquisition of like pay-per-click campaigns or email campaigns, and then some are going to start from organic search where you're harvesting an intent. You're pulling someone in that they're seeking you're not creating the demand. So I don't really know how to answer the question other than say yes.
He's giving you an example, the way he's interpreting outbound, inbound, because I have an answer to it too. So outbound is selling a steak to someone who just ate a steak. Inbound is selling a steak to someone who's hungry. I'm going to go to one statement to this, and that is that one of the hardest things I had to describe to clients or previous employers or so forth was understanding that nothing is linear, and yet attribution modeling is in a linear format. And you're dealing with a globalization. You're only talking about the frequency of engagement according to what is measurable by you with the engagement of the person or whoever's in connection with you. And so even though other things had been done, they may have hit you and then went off to 15, 20, 30, 50 other places to do it, or latency of time or change of interest or whatever. But then when they came crossing your path because of an ad or social post, because you were showing up in their news feed or the ad popped up for whatever reason, retargeting, whatever, they engaged with you again. And you're perceiving it in a linear motion of time, when in fact it's this whole global, every which direction but loose. The outbound inbound question turns a little fuzzy in my mind, because what may have inspired the engagement was Jeremiah, to your point, because I was hungry, may have now re-included the fact that I have already fulfilled that hunger by going to a steakhouse, and now I want to see why you're different than the steak I just ate. Is it outbound or inbound at that point? Did it start outbound? Should we attribute it to that and make it inbound later, or vice versa? I think it's challenging to say that your attribution string is really tailored to the content that's in that string as to what it was inclusive of. Were you out to garner business, or were you out to reaffirm the value of your business from having previous engagement? So because of that, I think the attribution string can kind of lend itself based upon what the components of it are as to whether or not it's from an outbound or inbound perspective initially. But it's like the quantum thing. Nothing's real unless it's observed. If you're not there, you can't tell. So we're only seeing a fragment of the engagement. We're not seeing the entire spectrum of their conversations. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that we don't know about, like data points, right? Whether they're seeing offline interactions with your brand, whether they're having conversations with their friends, whether the same person's using multiple devices from multiple locations. And, because you could have an attribution model that leads to conversion on mobile or desktop where that same person was on the other device at some point that didn't lead to conversion, right? So I think you've got to use attribution modeling cautiously. I don't think it's the gospel in terms of making every decision. I think it's a guiding tool to help you make smarter decisions each and every year with your marketing budget. And really, it's a great problem to have, because 20 years ago, before we really had reliable analytics, we were guessing. We didn't know what was working, what wasn't working, and there was a lot of gut and a lot of anecdotal evidence to tell us where to spend our marketing dollars. Whereas today, even if we're not precise, we're accurate enough with attribution modeling that we can make our best guess at what is working, and certainly clearly see what isn't working and know where to cut the budget when when necessary. So I think absolutely inbound and outbound, to answer the question, you have to look at with different models, because I think the trigger points, the start, the time decay, probably going to be very different. The incubation period is probably going to be very different. Potentially the booking window itself is going to be very different. So I think repeat business, i.e. the person that you're trying to resell a new steak to versus someone that's just looking for a steak, I think they're very different, and they offer a different value to you as a business, especially if they've never eaten a steak with you before. So I would segment those types of guests, and that's why it's important when you're looking at attribution modeling to follow it all the way through to conversion and try to tie it to individuals and understand what their lifetime value is as well.
Right. I guess I remember one explanation I gave to somebody that I kind of thought, hey, that was pretty good. I like that one. Was if you had a flat tire, going to Google's micro moments thing, you had a flat tire. Your first engagement is to get the tire fixed, and so that's your focus. Okay, and then Jeremiah, to your point, that might be an inbound marketing. Okay, I need something. And then I get my tire fixed. But then the residual of it is I need new tires. It wasn't the initiation of it. It wasn't the causation of the engagement, but it is the transition of what would be the progression of what's next. It's like, I got this tire fixed, but in all honesty, I don't want to run around on a repaired tire. Maybe it's, it's pretty worn out already. Let me go get new tires. And so the modality of what you're looking for has changed. The continuity stays the same. The attribution string stays in line, but the modality of it, the value proposition engagement has changed to something entirely different. So, I went for a business trip. I didn't end up booking, but now because I went to the city, I like the location. I want to come back for a different purpose. In our world, that attribution string still is in effect. In reality, the entire reasoning of the engagement has changed.
Right.
You had a third Maxim. Yeah. You had a third Maxim.
We did.
Technology of the future was felt and not seen.
Which I think the principle of that is, and what came out of it is, we're spending a lot of time and energy and money creating deploying new technology to enhance either our operations or to enhance the guest experience or to make more money for our businesses. And that should never come at the expense of hospitality, right? We're in the hospitality industry. We should absolutely give guests the choice of, whether they check in with a person, they're checking in via their mobile phone, they're checking in with a self-check-in kiosk at the front desk. Absolutely give guests the choice, but never, ever compromise the guest experience in terms of real human connection by forcing technology upon them, right? And I would say an example of that is, we talked about this on the podcast a few weeks ago. I forget what airline it was, maybe Delta. Apologize if it wasn't, it was someone else. But they're replacing real people at some of their kiosks in the airports with tablets, where you can go up to the tablet and touch it, and all you can do is talk to a person on the other side that's centrally located, right? So I get why they're doing it, but I don't feel like irate customers that are already frustrated and looking for solutions are going to be, they're not going to alleviate their frustrations by having to go through that technology in that situation. Now, there's probably an argument to be said, well, maybe they can service more people that way, but I don't think it's a replacement. I think it should be an augmentation to having real people there in addition to the tablets. So I think ultimately, when you're deploying new technology, just think about what this is really doing to the guest. Don't ever try to gain more data, gain more insight, gain an operational advantage at the expense of the guest. That's going to backfire long term. Everything we do should be about making sure the guest experience is better tomorrow than it was today. And that's funny. Using technology to improve that and help them communicate that to other people, to market to more people as well.
It's funny, as you're talking about it, reminded me of something many, many years ago, long before the internet is now. I had an opportunity to invest in a new restaurant concept. It's not so new anymore, in which they would have these racks, rows of grills that the customer could come in and cook their own steak on. And everybody just thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I'm like, no, I don't believe that. I don't agree with that, because I believe people go out because they don't want to cook, or they want to cook, but they want somebody that knows what they're doing to do it. And yes, you're saying, there's these guys that can't get, they don't think that nobody can get their steak perfect unless they do it, so forth and so on. And I'm like, yeah, on their grill that they know the hot spot and the temperature and the corks and all this, and they have whatever. I says, you're going to be putting them on a grill, and then you're going to tell them that if they screw it up, it's their steak anyway. You're not going to replace it for them. It's not like they get to try a couple of times until they get it right. And then we're going to have all these different accessories, and they don't have to worry about everything else. They just have to cook their steak. I'm like, I still don't think that it's going to be this megala chain thing that you think it is. And to their credit, some restaurants have succeeded in this model of adding that to it. But to your point, the reason why I'm bringing it up is guests don't want things put in their way where they have to do it when they're there with you. For you to do it, you're the hospitality person. I think there's a certain value proposition to pod hotels. Or automated sequences of things, because people have an efficiency to them that they just want functionality on certain things. I think they're there, but I think more often than not, when people travel, they want some recourse, that there's someone they can engage with if there's something that's not going the way it should go. So,
if you look at reviews, positive reviews for hotels, so many of them, there's a huge correlation between positive human interaction and a great experience, right? Even the folks that had some kind of negative issue with their room, when someone that's great on property handles it the appropriate way, 9 out of 10, they're going to leave a positive review if they feel like they've been treated appropriately by an individual, right? So we have to remain hospitable to the guests. We have to become or remain innkeepers. Like, that's our job in the hotel industry. Technology is not going to replace that. Sure, there's going to be niche products like pod hotels and things like that for specific needs, but the majority of travel is still going to need that human touch. And I think brands are getting that. I think if you look at what some of the brands are trying to do to enhance guest experience and give more information to the reservationists that are checking them in to make sure that they can accommodate specific requirements for guests, things like that, I think are ways to use technology in a positive way, but don't put it in their face and make it clinical or more friction than they had before the technology was there. So that was part of that Maxim. The other part of Maxim was we were talking about the same thing we talk about on this show, which is the bright and shiny stuff that's out there, and I think everyone agreed mobile is still critically important, and the industry as a whole is behind the curve when it comes to mobile, especially websites and booking engines. Mobile guest experience in general. And then, there was a little bit of talk about, bots and AI and things like that and how that's going to disrupt. I don't think AI realistically is going to disrupt the industry in 2018. I think we're a little ways away from that. It's going to enhance it. It's going to continue to augment it, but it's not going to be a disruptor. Things like bots, the same. I think you're going to see more and more trickle out. We've seen Expedia try it, Kayak try it. We're going to see individual chains try it a little bit, a few independents here and there, because there's tools now that make it easier to do it. But it's not going to be a majority of people adopting in 2018. So it's not something people really need to worry about today. So again, focus on the basics of technology. If you do that, focus on hospitality, your property is going to be fine.
Ironically, it seems almost in parallel to discussions that are going around and surrounding the S8, the iPhone 8, is the fact that when you look at the progression of phone development over the past years, there has become this commonality function. The phones are similar to previous design modems, pretty much, size, shape. In other words, it's kind of getting it right. So there's no need for these dramatic changes. Now, that said, there's always something that's new and unique to it, but it's more of a enhancement value, not necessarily a new shape, like Moto tried to do with their redo, saying, hey, look, rather than have a phone that tries to do all this in a small thing, we're just going to slap on attachments. And as novel as it is, as neat as it is, it really hasn't dominated like iPhone decided to do one day and take over the world. It didn't do that. It's a need for those who enjoy it, but it's not earth-shattering for those who didn't really want that or need that kind of stuff anyway. So same too with what we're talking about is that there's websites, like our conversation last week. Websites are kind of getting a certain commonality. Functionalities are getting a certain commonality to them and so forth. So rather than try to keep thinking that the only way to do better is to disrupt, sometimes it's a matter of being able to take what's being done well and make sure that it's done incredibly well beyond what was just initially, do it the best, mature it into a better relationship thing. 3-click to book mentality, the streamlining thing, whatever it may be, do it better rather than saying, oh, let's make purple and spinny letters and that's going to get attention and we're going to be different than everybody. It's not so much the difference anymore for it. So,
you don't need to be disruptive or differentiate in a major way. You just need to be really good at what you do. Have a good hedgehog concept, do something really well, and you're going to be successful.
Yeah, I want to point out one thing about the article, and for those, the link is earlier on to it and so forth. What I really enjoyed about this wasn't just the fact that you were one of the ones that did this, but the dialogue string. I liked that. I like how it wasn't just, we're going to write this and it's going to be, this is topic 1, this is topic 2, this is topic 3, you know, and then do quotes within it. You allowed each person to have their progressive conversation, which I thought was brilliant, considering that it's very podcast-esque, very live show-esque, where it's like statement, position, feedback, recap, you know, questions. I thought it was really, really well laid out idea for it.
Yeah, we backed into it that way because it started out as a webinar. So it was essentially, we took the transcript of the webinar and turned it into a physical written piece, which is why it's conversational, because it started out as a conversation. So that's why it came out in that format. But I like it. It's easy to read that way. I feel like
you feel like you're listening to a conversation, basically. I mean, that's how it looks like. It's a progression of conversation rather than the pyramid, the newsfeed presentation. Peak point first, supporting arguments, and then conditional conversation afterwards. This is more like, no, it's a string. It's a linear conversation, so you can see each person's perspective differently as we go along. So let's see.
This just does, like the 4 vendors really experimenting with the medium that we've been playing in for a while. You know, we've all done a lot of webinars and we get a lot of success, a lot of leads from it, and help the industry, which is great. But we're experimenters. Every one of us likes to optimize and improve and try to be better tomorrow than we are today. And so the best way to do that is to try something new, and you're either going to fail or succeed, but either way you're going to learn something. So
Jeremiah asked a question. I would say that most hotels don't have a basic outbound strategy. PPC and retargeting is still waiting till someone wants to have a stake. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think even on a very simple level of an outbound strategy, if you just look at the call center, you know, you've probably got reservationists there. If you have a good tool that can tell you utilization of your reservationists, there's probably a good amount of time that those folks are sitting there not answering the phone, right? So put them to use with an outbound phone strategy where they're either calling people that have called in the past month that didn't go on the book, or calling people that have booked in previous years. I think something really easy to implement, and it can yield really, really good returns. And then I think email still is underutilized. It gets a bad rap because everyone just straight away goes to spam, and sure, the regulations are getting tighter all the time. But if you have a good opt-in strategy, if you're delivering value in what you're sending to people, then email is still the number 1 form of marketing you can do as a hotel. So having simple trigger campaigns that analyze your guest history, look at who booked the previous year, in 30 days before their booking, automatically trigger an email that's personalized to them with a similar itinerary to what they booked the previous year, and with the rates included and all that, pull in that contact dynamically and trigger that inspiration. So you're not waiting for them to go back to Google or to Kayak or to Expedia to start the research for next year. Try to head that off and get them to only consider you. You know, maybe give them a couple options. Hey, we got these 2 properties in this location, or we got these 2 packages, and you can get breakfast included or get these experiences along with your vacation. You know, so the choice becomes you or you versus you or everyone else on the internet that they could stumble upon when they start the research. So I think yes, to answer his question, I think it's not, outbound isn't something people focus on as much as they probably should, but the reality is it's not that tough. And just those 2 simple examples can move the needle significantly in terms of repeat business.
Yeah. No, Jeremiah, thanks. I'm just sorry you had to duck out with it, but I also add to the comment about you can't, and this is an argument that I've had and I've won and I've lost, and there's validity on both sides of it, is that you can't generate demand when there's no demand to be generated. And it goes back to, as much as we feel that we have a perennial value of a hotel being location somewhere. If people don't have the interest or inspiration or need to be where you're located, no matter how good you are, no matter how well you present yourself, and no matter how much you spend to be in front of people, there's no value to it. You're not getting something because there's just nobody that's going to do that. Just, if they're in the mode or have the option or in the consideration of, you can garner your fair share and maybe beyond, and you should want to get beyond the demand to your market or your product. But you can't make somebody want to go to a place when there's no interest in going there, no time to go there, and no value for them to go there. You can't generate that demand with it. So
I mean, I agree and I disagree.
That's it. There's two sides to it, because I've fought the others. Like, yes, I can create demand. If you can creatively create content, you can create inspiration that didn't exist. So I believe there's both sides to that conversation.
I think you've got to, in general in the world, if you want to, everyone's mind is changeable, right? Their current state of opinion is movable. Like, no, unless you're talking about politics, some people are pretty rigid, right? But for the most part, if you came to me and said, "Are you going to take a vacation in November?" I'm going to say right now, no, I'm not taking a vacation in November. But if you came to me tomorrow and said, "Dude, there's this real special offer. They're secretly opening the new Star Wars hotel, and the first 100 people that respond to this only have to pay $50, and they get to stay 2 nights in this, and they're excluded," right? If it's something that appeals to me, you've provided new information to me that's changed my mind, right? You've provided unique value that is personalized to something that I would like. You can persuade people to change their minds by inserting new information to them. So I think, back to your point, you've got to create value that wasn't there before, they weren't aware of before. Keep sending the same message saying 20% off for November stays, 20% off November stays is probably not going to change my mind. But if you have something very unique that really appeals to me specifically, then there's a chance to persuade me. So I think there is a way to do it, but I think it's very difficult, and it's probably limited in its capabilities and scope. So I don't think I would spend a lot of time trying to create demand. I would leave that to the CVBs and the Chambers of Commerce's in your area and the events. And I think you're going to spend a lot more of your money more effectively harvesting the intent that exists through inbound and doing a few little outbound things to people that have a good chance of wanting to book, because they've come every year or they've been to your property before, stuff like that.
I think to my argument to what you're saying on the be able to generate demand is, if you were to say, come to, I forget the little town in Colorado, Open Field Farm. It's a personal farm, and pitch a tent and enjoy an evening. I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm okay. Now tell me that it's with the full eclipse, and now all of a sudden, well, wait a minute. Oh, that sounds kind of interesting. And the fact that these people that own this farm that had a few hundred acres, and said, the fact that they had this idea that they were in the full eclipse, the fact that they said, you know what, let's go over and advertise. And this is people that own a farm, okay? To advertise something from nothing. I mean, it isn't like this is a normal campground. This isn't like something they normally do or anything like this. But to go over and say, hey, let's advertise and get word of mouth and connect. Now all of a sudden, boom, acres and acres of little pup tents waiting to see the full eclipse, kind of thing. To me, that's inspirational about, yes, you can create demand. If you to your
create an experience. Yeah.
But to say, come November such and such, and we have this discount, come November such and such, dude, that's just white noise. That's just, I don't, if I'm interested in buying a car, I'll watch the car ads, but no, I'm not going to go over and respond because you sent me a 20% discount on something I didn't even know I had an interest, or whether I even would have an interest in. So yeah, excellent point to that. So we are at a little over an hour and a half. I don't want to keep dragging. We have like 15 art things we didn't hit, but was there anything out of any of those that were just like, hey, this is pretty cool stuff? Because the Facebook stuff we've kind of hit before with Cody. The dynamic ads are getting better. They're getting more mature. So that's interesting.
They're adding some new features to dynamic ads for travel, which, I think is everyone should be experimenting with Facebook right now, because arbitrage is still happening. In 5 years' time, the ads are going to be 4 times as expensive, and we're still going to be doing it, right? So go spend money on Facebook. The targeting is better than any other medium.
Just like what we just talked about, creating that demand. I mean, if you can target something of particular interest, because you can use that on Facebook, you can create inspiration where there wasn't any before.
Right. That's right. I mean, the Russians manipulated an entire election through Facebook advertising. So you can manipulate people into staying with your property pretty easily, right?
One thing I forget,
This
I'm not
isn't a
usually
political show. Probably shouldn't
right.
get
Yeah.
it.
No, because it's funny you mentioned that because my wife pointed out to me. She says, all this stuff you're liking, people, for somebody that is business wise on Facebook, you liking all these certain things, your friends following you know that you're liking this, and I'm like, yeah, I don't, it's fine. So yeah, but it really is beginning to show your political affiliations, like you think Trump's an idiot. Yeah, well, whatever. So, and I'm like. To me, it's like I forget about the fact that by just liking stuff, like I like the Daily Show and I like stuff. I mean, to me, it's you have to laugh at this stuff. It's too funny. It's a sad reality, but you have to laugh at it. But it's just I like those things. I'm like, yeah, that's a funny way of looking at that. That's pretty silly. But it does. I mean, this stuff, Facebook, man, they can twist and make it. Because I start seeing contra content show up. Because of I'm leaning the way I like stuff, that there's other contra content to try to give that balance. But yeah, that Facebook and the Soviet stuff was pretty interesting revelation. So no surprise, just interesting content.
Tim Peter, who's usually on the show, his podcast is rapidly becoming one of my favorites. And it's Tim Peter Thinks. In the last, not this one that came out this week, but the last 2 episodes prior to that, he did one on, it was on the big data breaches that had gone on, and then another one just on not being too scared about all the data that's out there, and it was kind of the opposing sides, but they were really good. But he made a lot of good points about just how much data is being collected on us, and how much power these big companies like Facebook and Google really have in the world today. So go check out Tim Peter Thinks, because he did a good job in the last couple of episodes with that stuff.
And it's always a good podcast, because what I like about it is I try to do the same thing where I try to keep mine around 20 minutes, and his I think he keeps about 15 because that's usually within the time frame that it's snackable, you can read, you can listen to it in a time that you don't have to come back to it, because they say that podcasts you have to come back to, that you lose a lot of listenership from it and so forth. But well, first off, Tim is remarkable, and I'll say that even without him being here, is that he's remarkable in insight. He has a great propensity to cut to the quick on something and understand it for its core meaning.
For sure, he can put pieces together really well.
Yeah, and he does that in his podcast exceptionally well. Where Tim Peter Thinks, it's kind of fun. Where you do a lot of times he keeps me in balance, because I don't think the way he does. I don't think I think much like those people, but he keeps it where it's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, and it's really neat, just the same reason why I enjoy these conversations, because the things you think this stuff, just talking to you or talking to anybody else quickly makes you realize, no, maybe something, or at least have an opinion about it, but you by far do not understand the perspective of everything by no stretch. So.
Yeah, and I think I learn something every time we're on this show or listen to this podcast, because like you said, it's a different perspective, and I think most people that are looking to learn, they appreciate other opinions, right? There's often not one true definitive answer for a lot of these things, and it's really good to get different perspectives. I think. I mean, I feel smarter for knowing you guys, for sure. So.
I definitely know I'm smarter for knowing you guys. That's for sure. So if anybody wants to, one is with the wonderful podcast. The link for your recent article is already up, but for the podcast or for more about fuel travel, where do they go?
Yeah, fueltravel.com is our website. You can get to the podcast at fueltravel.com/podcast. And go check out the attribution modeling episode. It's pretty good. And you can get on iTunes and Stitcher and wherever you listen to podcasts as well. So, and if you want to hit us up on Twitter with questions, you can just at Fuel Travel as well.
Excellent. Now, I don't know whether you know this, but I take the show after we're done, and then I go back and I edit it with an intro. I put some third bars in and stuff. But if you ever read the closing text, I pick on anybody that hasn't been on the show co-host wise, where it's like,
really?
like for instance,
yeah.
On the back of it, it's like I'll go say, our apologies to Edward St. Ange. We ran out of time to have you join the show. Kind of like what Jimmy Kimmel does to Matt Damon. All the time, where it's like, hey, so we ran out of time, just because whatever. But so I pick on those whenever it's not on the show. It's like a special thanks to to Robert for not showing up or giving any content this week or something. So look back, because it's a lot to read at the very end of it, kind of thing. But it's my kind of fun way to do it. So you can take a peek at it. I've been cynical in my closing comments on that. So
I'm gonna pay attention to it moving forward. That's funny. I like Easter eggs like that. We do that on the podcast. After the credits, we always put some weird.
Oh, I love the humor breakouts that you do at the end. Yes, the little fun quips at the end. I think they're brilliant. For archives of this show, you simply have to go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. There you'll get a link to this episode. All the links that we talked about and the links that we didn't get to talk about will be there as well. And the recorded version of this goes as a player on that as well, so that you can play back the show. And the minute breakdowns are there, so if you want to jump to different topics by minute, the notes are there as well. Stuart, thank you, because if not, everybody would just have been listening to me for the past hour, rapping about all this stuff. At least there was some intelligent conversation today with you here. But thank you for the time. Mr. Robert, we miss you. Ed, we never missed you because we had a wonderful representation of you today. I hope you appreciate the background. Yeah. Appreciate the background drop that Mr. Stewart provided. And Holly, thank you for joining us early. And Tim, thank you, as always, for the times you get to participate. We understand when you're not here, but we'll pick on you more, especially if you don't show up next week. So just to let you know. So. Anyway, with that, Stuart, thank you so very much. And for everyone else who joined us today, thank you again. And we'll join you all next week at show number 113 of This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing next Friday. Till then, bye, everybody.
Yeah, bye.